The first thing is you're not alone. You're not the only one. And it's normal for people to be going through dark times. And the second thing is this too shall pass. And the third is have hope that you can move to the next level. And then the fourth is to be able to just take baby steps.
In this episode of the Don't Change Much podcast, we're joined by Canadian icon Rick Hansen. Rick is a 6-time Paralympic medalist, best known as the man in motion for his epic 26-month, 40,000-kilometer journey around the world in his wheelchair. The Rick Hansen Foundation is a legacy of his incredible journey, and for over 30 years has been committed to creating a world without barriers for people with disabilities. Rick has an incredible message about mindset in the face of adversity. We'll talk about his health journey, the power of the mind, and what his foundation is doing to educate and improve accessibility for people with disabilities. I'm your host, Buzz Bishop, and you're listening to the Don't Change Much podcast. Welcome to the Don't Change Much podcast, Rick. Thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure. Thanks, Buzz.
It probably happens to you every day when you meet somebody new that they have to share their story of what you did and how it touched them. So I don't want to get redundant, but I want to let you into my world. In 1986 and 1987, I was in grade 12, and I was a chair for the Catholic High School Students Association. We organized fundraisers for your homecoming and got an all-star team of high school basketball players to go play in wheelchairs. We worked with the Vancouver cable cars, and we did a big fundraiser for you. And you wheeling up Cambie Street in May 1987 was a very special day for me because it was the day of my grad. I had to find a way to take the bus home, to get ready, to pick up my date, to still watch you. And I made it, and I was there as you were going back to Oak Ridge Mall. You touched so many people, but I feel like I have to explain to you how you touched me. And thanks.
Oh, well, that's a great story, Buzz. And I hope you made it back to the date.
Yes, I did. But
awesome.
But while you were going around the world and trying to raise awareness and funds for the challenges that you were dealing with, now you gave me the gift of leadership. It gave me the gift of learning about charity and helping other people. And there's just so many branches to the tree that you planted with that seed when you set off.
Just hearing that story, it's inspiring to me because when you go out on your journey, you never know where the ripples flow, and hearing them echo back is really amazing. And I think that's kind of one of the key things that I was trying to do, this whole notion of creating awareness and getting people to understand that there are people with disabilities that have amazing potential and ability, and there are barriers out there. And if we shift our attitudes from negative to positive, from disability to ability, all we need to do is get involved and bust down some barriers. So thank you for sharing that story, Buzz. And I'm really happy to hear that it helped you far beyond the vision and the mission that I had, and it translated into your life.
So let's go back, and I want to talk about some of the challenges that you had along the way, but let's go back to June 1973. What is 15-year-old Rick Hansen like in the spring of that year?
Incredibly optimistic, having graduated from grade 10, all-star athlete, dreams of making the provincial team, going to the nationals in volleyball, and maybe one day representing my country at the Olympic Games. And on a big adventure with my buddies, we were going out to the Bella Coola Valley, salmon fishing, and then coming back for the Williams Lake Stampede. Sure. So it was a dream start to the summer holidays. And then, of course, that day transformed as we came home, when we decided to accelerate getting home by a day and hitchhiking instead of getting a ride that was planned. And so we put our thumb out, and all of a sudden, this one guy who was going to drive right by us stopped because he recognized us and knew that we had helped him change his flat tire. And so he was returning the favor, and that sealed my fate. And ultimately, a few hours later, he went around a corner, lost control, rolled, and I was thrown to the ground, and my back was broken and my spinal cord was damaged. And a few hours later, I was told I'd never walk again.
That was life back in the day. You wouldn't think twice about that. Yeah, of course. You got a truck. Let's just all hop in the back and we'll hitch a ride. It's no big deal, right?
Yeah. exactly. Especially when you're in rural Canada. But yeah, well, fate was, looking in a different direction, and that was going to be the challenge of my life, and also the opportunity of my life.
So you describe it as the luckiest thing that ever happened to you.
What's interesting is when I first had my injury, I literally thought my life was over as I knew it. And I probably would have sold my soul for the use of my legs. I thought everything had been dumped upon me, that I was wrong. I was blaming the driver,
Yeah.
blaming my friend, Don, who asked me to switch sides on the truck. And then I started blaming my body for not healing. It was a tough, dark period for sure. But it's interesting when you're in those dark states, it rocks you to your core, and you dig to the deepest place, and you have to be able to hang on to hope. And for me, it was, okay, one more day. I think I can will myself to heal. I'm going to give it everything I can, and then another day. And then the next thing, you start looking at the helplessness of the situation. You're ready to give up again. And then you think, okay, what can I do? And we focus on what you can do. Ask the physio to strap some rubber bands on the side of the bed that I've been trapped in for 2 months, and start exercising the arms because they still worked, and looking out the window for your 60th birthday for the first time and celebrating that as a victory because you sat up for the first time in 2 months. And that was a goal you set. And these little baby steps, the focusing on the things you can do, setting goals, and having hope that things will get better, and then looking for inspiration, little pieces, little moments. Sometimes it's a person that walks into your life and they create a little bubble, an act of kindness, and it lights up your day, and it just gives you a little more fuel, and you keep going one more day. And that was the mindset in those early days, and trying to turn a dark canvas of despair into borders of texture, color, light, hope, possibilities, and what would my life look like as I started to come to terms with the fact that it didn't look like I was ever going to walk again.
Manage your stress, not the other way around. For simple ways to improve your mental health, check out the free MindFit Toolkit from the Canadian Men's Health Foundation. Complete a self-assessment, access virtual counseling, and learn more about how anxiety, stress, or depression might be impacting your health. Go to menshealthfoundation.ca and access the MindFit Toolkit to start improving your mental wellness today.
So you talk about getting those rubber straps and making your own weights. What impact did rediscovering sport have on your recovery?
It was huge because, again, I thought, even as I went back home after the rehabilitation process, and I was going back to my high school, and like literally, you think about it, like 6 months, 7 months earlier, I was like top athlete of my year class and all these goals and dreams. Now I'm in a wheelchair, or I'm hopping on crutches, and I'm looking, into the gym, and there's my team doing quarter drills or playing volleyball, and I'm sitting there in a corner going, holy crap, that's not me anymore. And I felt so isolated and so deflated in that. But I was super lucky. I had an amazing phys ed teacher and coach in Bob Redford. He brought me back into sport, and he made me realize that I could engage my knowledge and my passion, my leadership, and be a coach with the team and with an elementary team. And then he introduced me to wheelchair sport, Paralympic sport, which I had no idea what it was. I just thought of it at first as just for people with disabilities, as recreation. And then he finally took out a dictionary and he said, look up the definition of athlete. And I did. And he said, is there any reference in that definition that says you have to use your legs in order to be one? And I went, no. And he goes, so now it's not about you not being able to be an athlete ever again. It's about your choice of what you see and your ability to reframe and still see the opportunity to be the person you are and to express yourself as a full athlete. Instead of using your legs, you use your arms. And instead of standing up, you're in a chair. So what? The sport is the sport. The discipline is the discipline, and that you can go as far as you want. And it's now all up to you. It's not about that driver, not about your friend Don. It's not about your body. It's not even about the crappy choice that you made by sticking your thumb out and when you weren't supposed to. Now it's just all about you and what you see now.
So that teacher just changed your perspective, and that obviously light bulb goes on. Your mental health perspective just entirely changed on a dime?
All of a sudden, I realized where my biggest burden was. It was the maxim that I had set in my mind about what life was supposed to be like. I had to do that systematically by accident, by random hurdles and barriers. I had to do that in the context of even seeing the wheelchair, not as a symbol of disability, but as a vehicle for my mobility. I had to see that in terms of my earlier views that to be a strong person, you had to be completely independent. And of course, I needed to be interdependent in order to be strong. And an athlete, you had to use your legs? No. And so once I realized that, I all of a sudden, not only did I get rid of a constraining barrier in my head, I also started to see purpose. And purpose in life is so important. And I recognized I could still do the things that I love to do. And I just had to do it a little differently. And I asked him to tell me more. And as luck would have it, I was introduced to one of the biggest change makers in my life, a peer counselor from the Paraplegic Association, who I thought was wheeling into my life to offer emotional support or even physical support for how to live with a disability and how to get funds for going to university. And his big agenda was to recruit me because he was also the manager of the Vancouver Cable Cars wheelchair basketball team. And his name was Stan Strong. And that guy just completely shifted everything, because now I was able to translate what my coach was telling me into something tangible. And now I was able to get engaged. And I'll never forget showing up for that first practice. I really didn't expect much because I thought I was a pretty hotshot athlete. And so I thought, I don't want to embarrass anybody. I'll take it easy on them. I came in and these guys who were just like the Michael Jordans of wheelchair basketball. Sure. They were incredible. And my jaw dropped and I just went, oh my God, this is amazing.
That kind of advice can apply to whether, I don't know, we lose our job, we get injured in our own athletics, but it's just stop blaming, deal with how it is, and how can I get better with where I am, and just continue to plow forward, right?
Correct. Because again, like Dan would say, it's not what's happened to you, it's what you do with it that counts. And again, that's the way to separate yourself from being a victim. And whether it's a trauma in life, a lost loved one, a relationship, a disease, whatever it is that happens, at the end of the day, we can't change that happened. And so what really counts is, okay, well, what do I do? What do I do with it? Let's start with how I respond.
All right, let's go back in time again. And you're on the eve of doing your big thing. You've come down to Vancouver. You're playing with the cable cars. You get your degree. You're an athlete. You're winning medals in games around the world, and Pan Am Games and Paralympic Games. And what point do you go, that was fun, let's do a lap of the planet?
Yeah. It's like trying to make sure you're always in touch with your journey, because for me, I'd always been that adventurer, right? When I'd had this, Bella Coola was pretty cool for grade 10, but I was thinking about bicycling around the world after I graduated from high school or sometime after university, and getting some buddies together and just making that grand adventure. And so I always had that in the back of my mind during my rehab, but in my head, I'm going, I don't think I could ever do that. That's physically ridiculous. And through my wheelchair sport and basketball training, I ended up on the track and realizing the secret formula of my mentor, Peter Calistro, who was like the Michael Jordan of wheelchair basketball. And he was lapping me in the first year. And by year 4, I was able to beat him on the track. And I was a world champion wheelchair marathoner. And so physically now I could start to think about, oh, maybe I could actually physically do that crazy dream. And then you start recognizing that purpose is important, and paying it forward is a human mandate. And when you've been so lucky as I have to have so many people in your life who give of themselves to help you be the best version of yourself in whatever it is, whether it's in school or whether it's in sport or whether it's just in your life to be able to function. And so I had to find my calling. And of course, I was inspired by my buddy Terry, who I'd recruited after he lost his leg to cancer, and watched him be inspired by our team as well and by Stan Strong. And next thing, he's trying to think about how he can take his experience in living with cancer and his athletic ability to try to run across the country. And I saw through that journey, because I had already been doing a lot of little fundraisers. I saw in that journey how people viewed disability differently. They focused on ability. That wasn't his purpose. And he was really relentlessly pursuing a cure for cancer, and it was phenomenal. But it was a different message for me and a different source of inspiration. And I put those three things together: the old dream, the new physical ability through marathoning, and purpose. And I weighed it up against what more in sport. And sure, I could have kept going, but I thought, no, this is the perfect time. Why not right now? I've degrees pretty much done and done all I need to do in sport for the moment. Let's just take time out and make it happen. And so the purpose was to demonstrate what was possible if a person with a disability had barriers removed, whether they're in your mind, whether in society, attitudes of others, physical barriers. And the world tour would be the classic example in a time when people had trouble thinking about a person in a wheelchair wheelie across the street on their own, let alone around the world. And so that was the genesis. And of course, it's easy to get it formed eventually in your mind after a decade or so, but have the courage to actually speak it out and then start it. There's a chasm between those realities. And yeah, that first day, it was it was the greatest victory of the entire tour.
The first day, tell us about what happened when your van pulled out of the parking lot of Oak Ridge Mall and how that was such a big victory.
The first day being there was so much self-doubt. Yeah. There was so much skepticism by others. There were so many logistical reasons why we maybe shouldn't have left even. And in an era where sometimes people, they get so anchored on planning things to perfection, or you don't go. And in reality, there is a window of opportunity. And at some point in any initiative, your grand plans have to somehow get tempered with the fact that it'll never be perfect. And if you don't take your first step, it'll be one of those dreams you'll look back on in your 50s or 60s and go, yeah, woulda, shoulda, coulda. Right. I don't know why I didn't start. And I didn't want that at any point. And so that first day was huge. And I was speaking with Terry's mom and dad at the stage, and they'd given me the maquette of Terry's statue at Thunder Bay. My three teammates, Tim, Don, and Lee, were high-fiving each other on the side of the stage. They were so excited as I'm doing my speech. And my eyes are big as saucers. And in my head, I have a sore shoulder that has been plaguing me for months. And I haven't had any sleep. We're so unorganized. We don't even have enough money to get past Texas after the first 2 months. And I'm thinking, what you got yourself into? And then we didn't do much to change that when I wheeled under the overpass there, and they hit an overheight warning bar in front of that tunnel, and they should have turned around and found an alternative exit.
And then the chairs fall off and they get wrecked. It's the greatest day ever. And yet there is still setback and struggle. Your first way is down. You're going down to California. It's not an era of social media. You're making about $1 a mile in fundraising, maybe $70 a day. What changed about LA?
I think LA was really a symbolic threshold, because one of the things that we always wanted was to maybe create a theme song that might be a companion to the journey and create a wave of awareness as we wheeled around the world. And again, another pipe dream. And as it turned out, Chris Earthy and Terry David Mulligan were close and connected to David Foster, a great Canadian music producer. And they sent a little promo video to David. And by the time we got to LA, David had been trying to do the theme song to the movie St. Elmo's Fire. And they put this tape on, and then within 20 minutes, all the lyrics were formed. And meeting David and then having that song come out shortly after hitting the #1 charts. And maybe a lot of people thought it was about the movie, but we knew it was about us, and it was really inspirational.
And then the ball gets rolling and you get coverage. People want to know, what's this guy connected to the movie, connected to the song? And now as you wheel across the southern states, and now the ball's rolling, right?
So momentum starts, and then it stops, and then it starts, and then it stops. But the song constantly followed us. We were having a little New Year's break in New Zealand, in Auckland, and we were trying to soothe our disappointment and sorrow of having been broken into over the holidays, and all of our specialized gear was stolen. And so we're having dinner, and all of a sudden the song comes out over the air, and it's like, oh, it just changed our whole attitude that day.
Yeah, there you go.
And it's like unreal.
Eventually you make it to Australia. We get to sing the Bon Jovi. Whoa, we're halfway there. And I had you in my head about that today when I was doing my workout on the treadmill, and it was only a half an hour. And I thought, when I got to 15 minutes, I'm halfway there. If I got this far, I can get to the end. And that was a big thing for you.
In life, my goals as an athlete is, again, you have your goal and you break it down. You have your baby steps, you have your quarter way, you have your halfway. And to be able to actually put the tour in that perspective after all that period of time, 20,000 kilometers of wheeling as we got to Melbourne. And it was monumental. And that meant that every stroke after that was one stroke closer to home. And if we'd done it once, we could do it again. It really did give us that wind behind our back that we needed to be able to keep moving forward, because we had slowed the pace down from 113 kilometers a day to now 80 kilometers a day, which meant 6+ more months onto the tour, which meant coming across Canada in the middle of winter, and still lots of doubts as to whether or not we were going to break through and try to activate the momentum in North America.
You eventually make it back to Canada, in Newfoundland, and now I'm guessing Terry Fox plays a big role in your head as you're wheeling across.
Yeah, Terry was, as a friend, and an inspiration in my life. He was there all the way through, and with his mom and dad presenting the miniature version of his statue at Thunder Bay to me at the beginning, it was in the motorhome every day. No matter where I went, I had it right there, so that every break, when I was sitting back, frustrated, angry, disappointed, all the emotions that you would expect, and that I needed to come back and give it again, get out of that motorhome and get back into the cold, rain, wind. And I looked up and I saw that reminder of my friend and his spirit. And I thought, you know what? Yeah, he wouldn't. And I'll get out there and I'll take another stroke. And we would all of us, Terry, anyone that has any sense of perspective would always say that it is the team that makes you able to achieve big goals and dreams. But inside of it, the thing we have to acknowledge without being arrogant or egotistical is that there is a resilience that is necessary for us to bring. Only us. It's only you that has the choice to whether you're going to get up in the morning and you're going to get out of that nice comfortable bed and get into a cold steel wheelchair and put on the wet slimy gloves and push one more stroke and then one more and then one more. And when things aren't going well and you feel disappointed, do you think that your dream isn't happening, or do you look for something that is a little light of what is happening? And you find it because it's always there. And do you take responsibility for that? And if you have that in your mind and in your heart, your sense of agency and responsibility, then the rest of it gets you to overtop and gets you to the end, as in the team and the people who come out of the blue, the providence that shows up when you're literally at your weakest moment and someone comes and adds wind to your sail and says, come on, I'm with you too. Or you're ready to give up, like I was wheeling up the Eastern Seaboard when I really wasn't seeing a lot of increased support in America, and I was going to quit. And Amanda, my wife, who was the physiotherapist at the time, she said, you can't quit now. You have to believe that just around the corner that something good's going to happen and Canadians are going to respond. trust me. If you can't trust yourself, trust me. And so that helped me walk myself back off that limb of wanting to quit and go back again. And okay, one more day. Okay, well, just one more day. And next thing, like there we were in Canada, as she predicted. But I think of those moments and the balance between the resiliency, the personal responsibility, but then we all have our limit and we all have to falter sometimes, and we need to lean back on someone or something or faith and hope. And sometimes it happens when you least expect it in the most amazing ways.
From Amanda to the coaches to teachers, we all look at you as a superhero. I don't know if anybody's ever told you that, but that I'm speaking for Canada now. We think of you as a superhero, but you have a Justice League of heroes behind you on your cape, right?
Oh, and in front of me that break my wind. And seriously, it's true. Like no one gets anywhere on their own. And anybody who thinks that is probably living in a bit of a delusional dream world. We're all interdependent. And when there's a sense of responsibility to get in and lean in and to help others. And you think about my life journey, past, today, and in the future, it's going to be populated by amazing people that I love, that I respect, and that I'm super grateful for them giving me a little piece of their life, their heart, their consciousness, their time, their talent, their treasure, whatever it is, or just sometimes just being there in their presence so I can find a bridge to look for an inspiration when I need it most, right?
So you start off, you're getting $1 a mile, you cross, we high five, wave each other on Canby Street. You pull into Oak Ridge Mall 2 years, 2 months, 2 days later, and it's $26 million in the bank. So the struggle was worth it, let's say. And here we are, decades later, and there's $400 million that you've put into this passion. What's on the Mount Rushmore of foundation achievements in the decades since?
I look back at it and I think about when we first started, people wouldn't even dream of uttering that a cure for spinal cord injury was possible. And now I look at it and there's like at least a dozen legitimate clinical trials out there that are taking the science that was then thought then to be impossible, taking it through the laboratory, and now it's being tested on people with spinal cord injury to demonstrate whether the spinal cord could be protected after an injury, or whether you can replace lost cells after it's died, or whether you can actually stimulate it to regrow or reconnect, or there's biotech solutions that kind of bypass the issue and still augment function. And all of this is going on today, and people's lives are changing. There are people who are actually walking away from an injury today that, like 35 years ago, would have left them completely paralyzed. In my circumstance, it took 3 days to get to a surgical intervention, and now it's hours, and things have evolved so much. Our foundation has put millions of dollars, like hundreds of millions of dollars, into supporting spinal cord research leaders, collaborative networks across the country and around the world-class centers like the Blessed Spinal Cord Center, and worked with, again, a constellation of stars to help make that happen. And we feel privileged to be part of that. We're a thought leadership organization, continuing the founder's spirit of setting goals and tackling big barriers and bringing people together to find solutions, and let the experts and the resources come together for that to really help it become reality. And our foundation has also put out millions and millions of dollars for grants to help make playgrounds accessible, help put ramps in community centers or schools accessible. And we have also been able to recognize that while we can do that, we're a small organization. So what is a movement-based solution that's going to change the world so that the built environment in the future is accessible for everyone, and we don't have to retrofit and fix the barriers that we have? And so we're training thousands of people, architects, engineers, city planners, and building operators and advocates to have the same credentials about how to build a building completely accessible and beyond the minimum code. And then we can rate and measure that success and celebrate it. And then when someone asks how accessible you are, you can actually answer it. Yeah. And that's something that we've started, but it's going to be executed by hundreds of thousands of people in over 100 countries around the world. And the tap will be turned off so that all new buildings are built for people.
Right.
And they're accessible. Yeah. And it's really inspiring to know that's going to be a legacy and that our team has incubated that. And that's our mentality. Is like, I think about full circle with you, like you were inspired because we had a bit of a school program that probably your teacher had connected with and maybe communicated it. But in reality, you think about this, that wouldn't it be cool to have every school on the planet and every school person or child to be exposed to a positive view of disability and then become inspired to become champions of change, barrier busters for the future, difference makers. And I think about the power in that. And because it is an ultra marathon of social change. And so when the next generation is engaged and capable and empowered to be able to make change, you think, wow, that's going to accelerate this to get truly to the end game of the vision that I've been chasing for all these years. And I'm honored to be working with our foundation and as the founder and adding my time and passion and hopefully some of my skills, and knowing that it's going to be doing better work than when I was there. And it's going to continue because it has to, because there's so much more work to
For
be done.
sure. I'm guessing your message has been honed a lot over the 51 summers since that accident. But give us the elevator pitch to anybody who feels limited by physical, mental, situational. What's an elevator pitch to get somebody to push through their darkness, whatever that is?
The first thing is you're not alone. You're not the only one. And it's normal for people to be going through dark times. And the second thing is this too shall pass. And the third is have hope that you can move to the next level. And then the fourth is to be able to just take baby steps when however out of balance you feel, however disoriented, try to focus on what you can do and try to take baby steps forward as the rest of it settles. And you look back at it in 3 months, 6 months, or even in a year, and you go, holy crap, was I ever glad I didn't come a long way.
The Rock has a quote. He says, it's day one or one day. So you can dream about it or you can do it today. We call it the Don't Change Much podcast for a reason, because it is baby steps. Yeah. As long as you're steering in the right direction, you're going to get to the right place, and it doesn't matter. What little changes are you still doing for yourself to make things better?
Yeah, the first thing is if you're not healthy in your mindset, in your spirit, and in your body, it's very difficult to be able to represent yourself in the other roles you wish, whether it's a husband in a 37-year marriage, or whether it's a father or a grandfather, my 3 daughters, or my amazing 4 grandsons, or it's maybe as the leader in my foundation or in the community. You need to have that health commitment. And what I've learned is, in the old days, health was like a byproduct of my athletics. And so I took it for granted. And to be honest, I went to the bank with it a lot over the years. And then as I moved into my 40s and 50s, I started to see the flaws in that and feel the vibration in my body and sometimes in my mind and spirit. And I realized that I best make this my priority. And it doesn't have to be in equal time, but it has to be my priority so that I can be the person I want. And that means to make it a priority, you have to commit to some level of exercise every day. You have to commit to being mindful about your attitude and your approach to life. And then the other thing is to be able to then keep reflecting on self-awareness and your spiritual journey. And so I do that. I have a life plan. I look at it from time to time because things change. And then I try to hold myself accountable. And at the end of the day, the accountability is, again, it's in the reflection of your time for the things you think are important and that you value. And if your time isn't matching that, you're out of sync, and therefore it's fish or cut bait.
Right.
Because you can't aspire to do something if you're not putting the time in. And if it doesn't reflect the balance of the priorities you have at the time, then it's maybe time to rethink it and be re-energized.
As this chat is going live, it's the middle of the Paris Olympics. They're coming into the heat of competition. And in just a couple of weeks, the Paralympic Games will be going, and thousands of athletes will be out there inspiring, appreciating the struggle that they went to get to wherever they're at. And I just want to remind everybody to pay attention to both games. It's not just the ones that are happening now. The ones at the end of the month will be great too.
Yeah, that's a great point. And it's 2 events inside one games and one class of athletes. And sport is a powerful mirror for how society views itself. People with disabilities are people first. And let's see it that way, even though sometimes having separate games makes us think that maybe it's a different class of people that don't quite belong. So let's build bridges to that so that we take away that stigma and really reflect the athleticism of these athletes and understand them and their sport as we would any other athlete.
Rick, from my heart, thank you for what you've done over these past decades. You've been an inspiration and continue to be. Thanks for taking your time today.
Thanks for having me. I really appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. Click the follow button if you enjoyed the conversation and join us each month for a new episode of the Don't Change Much podcast.